Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Triple Option Podcast. I'm your host, Drew Douglas, along with Avi Dingley and Nate Autry. Today we'll be talking about the Arkansas versus Cincinnati matchup. Obviously, Cincinnati coming off a run to the college football playoff last year, and let's see how they did against Arkansas in a bid to prove themselves that they aren't a 1 year wonder. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So, as you can see here, a close matchup. Arkansas won by one touchdown, 31-24. Bearcats definitely getting used to not having some of their stars, such as Sauce Gardner and Desmond Ritter. But the game was definitely very entertaining. The first half, I believe the score was, I believe, 14-0 at the end of the first half, and Arkansas, while it was very close at the beginning, Arkansas definitely began to pull away towards the end, with some really good play on the offense in the second half. Second half, so now that we're talking about the offense, some of the offensive stars during this game, for Arkansas at least, was running back Raheem Sanders with 20 carries and 117 yards. While he didn't have any touchdowns, he had a considerable impact on both in the running game, which obviously is important in setting the tone for such a game against a team like Cincinnati. Because as you can see for Cincinnati, they were definitely doing most of their damage doing almost all their damage through the air through quarterback Ben Bryant. Obviously, he transferred the year before, sat behind Dev last year, and in this game definitely showed that he can be a good quarterback through the air against an SEC defense. Obviously, they had some injuries on the defense during the game, but regardless, 325 yards through the air with two passing touchdowns and an interception. I think the unfortunate fact for Cincinnati here is while they did play well, I think they ran into a similar issue they had against teams like Alabama last year, where it wasn't necessarily anything that they did technically bad that caused them to lose this game. It's just the fact of being out athleted, if that's even a word, just being almost outdogged, if that makes more sense. And I think that also translates over to the defensive side. Which, before we get over there, any questions you have, Abby or Nate, about this game?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. What led you to choose Raheem Sanders over KJ Jefferson in this game, who went 18 for 26, 223 yards passing with three touchdowns, and he also had 18 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown. So four total scores, 18, 18 completions, 18 rushes for KJ
Yeah,
Jefferson.
I just think the reason I said that as well, because Jefferson did have really good stats. I just think since he's first two levels of defense are a lot better than his third level being secondary, and so I think Raheem Sanders did a fairly good job for what he was going up against, and versus what KJ Jefferson was going up against. If that makes sense, and during parts of the game, Raheem Sanders broke fairly large runs that did make an impact. He had a very good run at the end of the second half that led to that second touchdown. And so it wasn't necessarily purely stats, but he definitely had some key moments that led to Arkansas' success in this game.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Albie, you got any questions?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good so far. I'm really
yeah,
loving through his analysis.
yeah. So without further ado, let's move on to the defensive side of things. And so as you can see, some of the defensive MVPs for Arkansas, they had the recent Alabama transfer Drew Sanders, who had a solid game, 5 tackles, three of those solo, as well as a sack. And then for Cincinnati, they had Ivan Pace Jr., who also honestly popped off in this game with 12 tackles, 6 solos, and a sack as well. I think especially looking at Arkansas, I think it's good to see Drew Sanders really fitting into his role in almost a hybrid safety linebacker, outside linebacker type of fit. And I think they definitely got a key win with Drew Sanders because there's contention between him choosing Arkansas, Oklahoma, or Texas. And I think it's good to see him having some good success against a team like Cincinnati. Well, before they go into SEC play, where he'll play an even more critical role against teams like Ole Miss, Bama, and LSU as well. Ivan Pace Jr. definitely could seem to be an anchor in the defense for Cincinnati this year. Obviously, their defense got weakened quite a bit by the loss of Sauce Gardner, who went as a top pick to, I believe, the Jets. And so this obviously wasn't a super defensive game, the score being 31-24 on paper at least, but the first half was very defense heavy for the most part, as the score was 0-7 until about 5 minutes left in the first half. So again, not much to talk about on the defense. wasn't a defensive showdown, but definitely were some key players that stood out. It was a good job on, and again, Arkansas lost some defenders temporarily during the game itself, and it was good to see them stand tall despite that. And hopefully those players get back healthier when they go into SEC play, because especially with a team like Arkansas that isn't as deep in talent, they definitely need all the help they can get on that defense.
Yeah, one thing I just like to add is like kind of like a shout out is the way to say this is just call out Bumper Pool, linebacker for Arkansas, who's coming in for his 5th year on the back of 200 tackle seasons. He had 13 tackles this game, led Arkansas for tackles. I remember at least the past 2 years just hearing his name called out over and over again. He's one of those names that the announcers kind of latch onto and be like Bumper Pool because he has a neat name, a lot of production. Showing in this game that he has no intention of slowing down his production in terms of tackles in his 5th year.
Yeah, definitely. I think Bumpool definitely plays a key role in this defense as well. I think the only reason I chose Drew Sanders is obviously his new role in the defense and how he adjusted. But I was also surprised that Bumpool stayed another year at Arkansas. I thought he definitely could have gone, perhaps not first round pro, but definitely could have gone onto a team and had a decent amount of success. But I think it's good for a team like Arkansas, whose coach Sam Pittman is definitely trying to build a strong culture. When you have, I guess you could say, super seniors stay around and help the team out. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. So
and
like
go right ahead, Nate.
yeah. So just kind of moving on to like overall impact of this game for both teams going forwards.
Yeah, I guess just for both teams going forward, I would think Cincinnati. This was a tough loss to swallow for Cincinnati because looking at the rest of their schedule, I don't believe they have really another chance to prove themselves. Obviously, being a group of 5 team, one loss, the playoffs aren't going to happen. See, if you look at the rest of the schedule, I believe the best team they play the rest of the way, I would say, is in theory Indiana, which
Probably, yeah.
or
Probably
UCF rather.
UCF. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, being a one loss team already in the group of 5, the playoffs are out of the question for them. I think Arkansas was the only game they had to prove that they could play with the quote unquote big boys. But I I say on the flip side for Arkansas, I think this was a very good win for Arkansas. Um, One, obviously Arkansas has been trying to rebuild what it was back in the late '90s and before when they were more a powerhouse program. I think getting key wins like this can be very helpful. Obviously, I think it can be slightly concerning when an SEC team that definitely has the size advantage isn't winning by more, but that's against most teams since he's obviously a very talented and well put together team by Luke Fickle. And so I think this is a very, very good win for Arkansas, who obviously playing in the SEC West is competitive year in and year out. They played Texas A&M and Bama back to back, and the rest of the schedule is not going to be easy. Is not going to be easy. But I think this is a solid win for a program that's trying to really take that next step.
Yeah. I will just say, after this week, they're ranked number 16 in the nation, which I think that's still funny because I think they're still the 3rd team in the SEC West, which is ridiculous. But I'm
I think
scared. I'm scared for them. I think they're
what
one
was
of
the
like
strength?
Ole Miss is went from 21 to 22, I think. So they're like 22 right now. So they're above Ole Miss. I think they're behind Alabama and A&M, of
Mm-hmm.
course. Yeah, but I mean they look good in this game. This is a good win over a team that just had a lot of national success. I think it's I don't know. I'm scared honestly because Ole Miss has to go to Arkansas to play against them. And the last time we went there, we kind of had a not so memorable outing. Metro may have thrown for like 6 interceptions. I don't know. I wasn't counting. And I
Minor
stopped watching.
fact. You got
Yeah,
too sad.
yeah, yeah. It was not a good day.
Yeah. No,
Avi, you got
really.
anything you want to add?
No, that sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Seeing there's nothing else to add. I guess we can start closing out this episode. Once again, thank you to everyone for listening to another episode of the Triple Ultra Podcast. Once again, we're your co-hosts, Drew W, Nate Autry, and Abby Dingley. If you did like this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on the Triple Ultra Podcast. Peace.
See you next time.